Hello, gorgeous faces. It is so nice to see everyone. Okay. Now people are joining in as we speak. I had a lot of requests behind the scenes this time, but Erin is such a delight. I remember, when you like have a talk with someone, I like didn't know her, and then it was like, oh my God, like those people you knew when you were like 5 in kindergarten, and I was like, that's Erin. I've known her my whole life, and you've got that way about you. But you guys know the rules. Nothing boring. If we can do a Google search and find it, let's like skip it and go do a Google search. Let's talk about interesting things. Let's talk about what makes the world go round and what we really think about things and our souls. Let's talk about good stuff. But all quirky questions are welcome. Type it in and I will send Erin the chat. If you've got anything, personal you want to say hi or something, she will get it after the call. So Erin Moon joined us for a call and we talked about all the great things we talked about, and life and loss and our triumphs and our joys. And I always had it in the back of my mind because she has some scary credentials, right? So I had one of my, which I knew was going to come again because they always do, Dark Nights of the Soul, where I thought I must just be horrible. I'm a bad actress and nobody's had the guts to tell me. And they're just, because people love me because I'm lovable. So they don't want to like be mean and tell me that I suck. So I said, Erin, can you please coach me? Because as down to earth as she is, I suspected that she takes her craft extremely seriously. And boy, because it was for my demos and everything. And I was like, okay, I did it once, we're done. And then Erin's like, no. Now, normally we do it and then we check it and then we do. I'm like, okay. And then she's like, okay, I've got some notes on this one. And I'm like, oh my God, I walked away with some serious respect. I mean, because I thought that I worked hard. I thought that, but that is some serious respect for the level of the way you dissected. I know it was for demos, so it's not the way
you're putting your best foot forward. Yeah.
But your ear from all the books that you've directed, and I'd love to hear, you've already told me this, but I'd love, because it's kind of profoundly affected the way I listen now to my work ever since spending that time with you. Can you tell the gorgeous studio audience about the way you listen to yourself? I can't remember the details, like once a year, and the way you listen to other narrators, specifically female, and what you're listening for when you're listening and what that looks like, because that feels like part of your quote unquote homework.
Yeah.
I'd love to hear your process and how that works.
I mean, it's part of my enjoyment, I think, as well as part of my process of growth. And so I listen to myself once a year, once every 2 years. Like right now, I'm listening to a book I did ages ago because we're doing the 5th in the series, but it's been like 5 years. So I'm actually listening to it because I feel like for true continuity, I need to like take a listen and be like, is what I wrote down for those character voices actually, going to match, so that it's got some continuity. And what's interesting listening to that, because it was so long ago, and I kind of, before I took a step forward after I'd listened to myself and taken a couple steps forward, that the continuity that will be different is the way that I embody the work now is at a greater level. So I think that I've sunk in deeper, given more permission for myself to be wholly and completely in the moment, and to allow the language to be so much more embodied. in the moment, that will be the continuity thing that I won't match purposefully, because I think that work has come forward more. And that's when I'm listening to stuff like what I love to listen to is I love to listen to really embodied language, in the moment to moment, honest, fully embodied truth, because that's what I feel like great art is. And my interpretation of that is mine. That's got nothing to do with the narrator or the painter or the ballerina or whoever it is who's creating the piece of art. I feel like what I love about storytelling is I love to feel like I'm connected to your soul. And yet, maybe not the given circumstances of your particular life, but I want your level of belief and your level of honesty and your level of moment to moment truth to be so truthful, to be so real in the moment, that I feel like I'm getting a part of you, like you, Daniela, you, not you, some acting that you're doing. You.
I've got to stop you. I've got to stop you because, okay, now I've got like 2 massive deep dives I have to do. And if I don't stop you, I'll have like 6 and then I'll forget the first one. So the first one was, you said that you went back, and because it's a series, you listened to something that you'd done a while ago. And that connected in my brain to what they say about people that you can be a craftsman, but you don't become a master until you start to teach others, because then you see it, you interpret it in a different way, and you see it. So you narrated that book, then you moved on and taught yourself lessons, and then you listened back. Do you feel that the very act of listening to your old work and identifying where you had grown cemented the knowledge that you had acquired in growing, the way somebody coaching something cements the knowledge they have in their craft?
Yeah, 100%, because essentially what I'm doing is I'm self-coaching. I'm just at this point in my career, I just can't be too caught up in the way I sound or anything like I'm just a performance among a bunch of performances that I listen to, because I'm a listener, because I listen mostly to femme voices, because I want to, if I'm going to continue to grow and elevate myself as a human being and myself as an artist, which are comorbid, they work together, then I have to be able to see myself objectively as much as humanly possible. I think I might have even mentioned it on our last call. It's like, I want to be able to watch the movie of my life and live the movie of my life. So I think that self-observation opportunity is, I don't want to just be watching the movie of my life, because I don't want to be that self-critical. I want to also be living it,
Right.
But I want to be able to have the objective opportunity to be able to witness my living. And
which
so
is exactly what you do in narrating.
It's
you want
witnessing my
to
art.
be in it as well as on, but when you listen to femme voices, do you do that because it's a reflection of yourself and you, because I remember, because I will confess, I gravitate toward male narrated pieces. And after we talked, you said you really need to listen to more female. And then I realized that the ones I listen to do the psychological thrillers, and they're British. It's not often.
You need to listen to Americans.
It's not that I don't want to, but I wonder if it's the genre. But then again,
there's tons. Hillary does tons of mystery thrillers. Brittany does a ton of mystery,
and yet I still gravitate toward male, which I hate, because it feels unfair. You don't want the audience to, because I'm a female narrator that wants to do thrillers. I don't want them to prefer a man. But
so for me, I do that because then I'm just one of a group of people that I'm listening to, so that when I listen to myself, I'm giving myself the same notes as I would give anybody else. Or I'm noticing the same, mostly at this point in my career, it's noticing like a pattern or something. And that was when I talk about 5 years ago, when I listened to a book of mine and I was like, ooh, You're getting caught in the early part of the sentence. You're overstressing words in the early part of the sentence. And you're getting on, you're just not getting into the thought. And even though you're being truthful and you're finding I was finding the connection, that was holding me back from being able to put the connection and the words together in a more, to be able to communicate, to be for the outcome to be a better communication of the truth of the moment. And so that's essentially, I was like, oh, okay, I've got stuck in a pattern. I'm getting stuck in the early part of the sentence. It's time to get further into that thought. And that's a common thing. And it's something that I hear, I pops up every once in a while with people like that I'm listening to. And I'm like, oh, that thing's happening. And it doesn't wreck the book for me. And it doesn't make me think that they're a bad narrator. And it doesn't hold me back from listening to other books they've done. It's just one of the things that can come up. It's like, with stage actors, it's what I call chicken necking. So that's a very common thing for stage actors. They chicken neck, they act with their face forward. And so being able to stand in themselves, that's something you got to learn. You got to practice. You got to unroot from yourself so that you do and act like you would in real life, doing the real life storytelling. And it's a medium that works, film, television, theater, audiobook narration. In that way, that truth of embodiment in the moment is the hardest thing about acting, and it's the greatest because it's so fun when you're on the ride.
Yeah, when you can, so which takes courage.
Tons of courage.
But I started listening to a male narrator, British, who did 2 time travel books. And I don't know what it is, but time travel books they have to be done a certain way. Or there is a specific tone needed for a time travel book to keep me interested. And I'm a big fan. And I realized what it was about this guy was I really liked him. I really like this guy. He's coming on Joe. I called him up. I was like, I really like this guy. I want to spend more time with him. Yeah. And I've lost that. So I was sick for a long time. And I think I listen to the other voices and I hear them hitting the vowels, which are all things you would have told me when we were doing my demos. If I should have been doing more, Daniela, you're not doing enough vocal fry or hitting the vowels hard enough. You would have told me if that was proper acting. I trust Erin.
I'm never going to tell you that. I'm never, ever, 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 ever going to give an actor that note, because that has nothing to do with your soul. That has nothing to do with your heart, and that has nothing to do with your guts, and it has nothing to do with your head. And that's why I'm listening to that story. Yeah. There's no technical, it's one of those things where it's like, you've got like all of that idea. And also this idea that there's trends. I'm sorry, but if the trend, if you've heard that the trend is to be more outrageous in the character choice voices and to have vocal fry, then you can also look at the post that Paul Rubin just said that said less, 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 less. Yeah. So how can those two things be true? Well, guess what? They can, because there isn't a trend.
And it's a way of letting yourself off the hook. It's a way of letting yourself off the hook, because that mental story is basically saying, the girls that sound like that are getting the jobs, and I don't sound like that. That's not, but
there's a way to be human, that there's a way to communicate love, that there's a way to communicate passion and heartache and joy and the mundane, that there's a singular existence that is acceptable by all. That's also, it's like categorizing listeners and categorizing narrators. And yes, there is an 80% ballpark of working professional narrators that are within this pretty honestly large ballpark of performance. And that ballpark includes people who make subtle choices. It includes people who make larger, more animated choices, and all, but the fundamental, I think the fundamental through line of that ballpark is truth. Is bring you, don't just read to me. Dear God, don't read to me.
Yeah.
You know, I can go to an author's reading for that. I can have my mom read to me if I want to do that. I want a way, and I said this to my students at ADA in New York as well when I was teaching there. I said to them, at the truth be told, this might sound a little brutal, but I want to walk away with a piece of your soul. That is what I want.
And right there, that's where, and that's what I realized listening to the time travel guy, was Mark Rice Oxley. That's what I realized. Who am I bringing? Because the thing is, and I hide it well and I can act over it, but if I'm scared and freaked out and thinking I'm dying and like, wake up, it's like waking up and saying, I'm magnificent and fabulous. I'm going to do mirror work and say it might work for some people.
Yeah.
But if deep down inside, I'm like, oh my God, you know, am I going to die? Am I going to, that's there. And I think it's a direct line to, I'm still listening to this guy's stuff, even though it's going on about a bunch of gaming stuff, because I really love just having him in my ear.
And what's so awesome about that, and I think what's so awesome about, you know, art in general, is I might listen to that same narrator and not enjoy them because of all that this body has experienced, because of all of the ways that I enjoy absorbing story, because of my proclivities toward blah, blah, blah. And it's something I say to my students when I teach classes, like larger classes, is because one of the assignments is I want them to be a listener. And I always say, don't turn the book off after after 2 minutes. Don't just listen to a bunch of samples, listen to a whole chapter. And if somebody doesn't jam with you, there's a chance that after a chapter, you're actually going to, essentially, there's a name for it. And I can't think of it right now, but essentially your mirror neurons are going to turn on and you are going to align with them. And all of a sudden, somebody who felt like a little hinky at the beginning, where you're like, I don't know, I don't really like their rhythm, I don't like how they're coming to this, they're to that. Give it some time, because there's a chance that you are actually going to sync up. It's what audiences do when they go and see a piece of theater together. They actually can align their breaths at certain points.
Yeah.
There's all sorts of fascinating, intangible things that the human soul experience, whatever you want to call it, does when it absorbs art and when it is with art. And one of the things that we do is we sync up. And then if you don't sync up after, you know, a chapter or two, fine, go ahead and get rid of it. I've done that with books.
And also them syncing up with the book, not because sometimes it takes them a chapter or two to become the book.
Yeah.
Give them a chance.
Yeah, the book might be hinky at the beginning, the narrator might be, you and the narrator might be, give it all a shot. And then if that doesn't line up, then fine, get rid of it. It's all good. But we have these perspectives that it's this person's fault, or it's this element's fault, or this thing is going wrong, when the truth is, it is my being and another person's being and a whole nother person's being, because there's the writer, getting together and deciding if we're going to dance. And
it's like Michael Kostroff says, there's no like lucky hat you can wear to the audition. No. But I pay lip service. And I'm saying this in case anyone else is just on that other, because like I'm just now admitting it this week, okay? After a lot, I pay lip service to that. I do.
Yeah.
But you get me on a bad day, and all of a sudden, the me from high school that's like, I'm not like them, they're not going to like me anyway, that hits. And I challenge anyone out there in this line of work to not have a tiny bit of that.
Oh, like, yeah, I do. Yeah. I totally do. I do often. And honestly, I say to her, like, I hear you. This is vulnerable. I love you. This is vulnerable. You don't know how or if, or, you know, for some people, they just loathe what you're putting out there with your honest soul, and they, you know, and then other people love it. And you have no idea what trajectory your life is going to fundamentally take in any aspect. And I hear you, and that's vulnerable. Like,
and it's who you show up
at. Child.
You have to show up. And also I'm finding working in with indie authors is you like them and you want them to like you. So you already like each other before you do the sample. And then you're like, if they don't like it, you want them to tell you, please tell me. I don't want to do your book if you don't like it, just because we'll stay friends. Facebook me.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah, exactly. And I
So
was just, oh yeah, go ahead.
sorry, I was going to ask. No, I was going to go forward with your narration. So finish that thoughts.
Well, I was just working, it just reminds me, I was just working with a coaching student yesterday, actually. And one of the things they were struggling with was that were saying that they were struggling with, one of their goals was to find that connection piece. Because they were kind of coming to the piece just a little bit away from it, almost like coming to it from an omniscient point of view when it's a third person limited, or first person when it's like it's their experience.
Yeah.
And part of that was actually wrapped up in the fear of doing it right. And that's what I hear from you around the vowels or the vocal fry. Like, honestly, am I allowed to swear? I'm allowed to swear. Okay,
we were just saying, compared to Johnny Heller, you're fine.
Johnny, open the doorway of swearing.
Johnny's made it good for all of us.
So like fuck all of that, because that's not the way you normally are in the world, or you speak in the world. And yeah, it's an intimate conversation you're having in audiobooks. You're not like filling a theater. You're just you and me having a conversation. These are your words, your words, your words, your thoughts, your emotions, your feelings, your heart. And trying to remember, like, what was actually standing in the way was the fear of doing it right. It wasn't her ability to connect. She has the ability to connect, but the fear of getting it right, or that was essentially the guardrail that she was standing behind. And once we looked at it and went, well, what's her opinion of that friend that she's talking to? Like that, those adjectives really do seem to say she has an opinion of some sort. And I'm not saying hit the adjective. I'm not saying hit the vowel. I'm saying she feels. What does she feel? What is she feeling? Just feel it. Don't tell me. Don't show me. Don't emphasize it for me.
Yeah.
Just feel it. And as soon as she feels it, I feel it. That's the mic. It's the good part of the mic. The rest of the mic is in your head.
But also the heart. I think the bit I was missing was the heart. I'm showing up in the booth with a heart that's like tired.
and scared about doing it right, and has an idea of like, I got to do it this way, as opposed to like, screw all of that. These are the given circumstances, like whatever's going on in our own lives. It's one of the things I love about acting is, yes, on the dark nights of the soul, it is sometimes very hard to get past that. And then you have to have your other coping mechanisms that process that through your body so you can do your work. And one of the things that I like about it is when I am in a funky place, I get to come in and give my own self different given circumstances. The given circumstances of my life is I'm a mage with incredible power who's trying to save the world with a werewolf boyfriend. Like, or I'm a 13-year-old girl who's trying to make it through life, her coming of age story. So it's still me, but those are the given circumstances of my life, not the ones that I'm actually living, which might be crappy. And that's the beautiful escape of not only for our listeners, but for ourselves. And it's about belief in the given circumstances, belief wholly in them, and then bring your beautiful heart.
And the technical things, I was just thinking that, because you see the technical things, the technicalities in the booth, the technical things we all do it. I realized something. I'm very socially adept, so I can dial it in. Like I can easily dial it in. So that stops you feeling it. So like I can be everyone's best friend and encouraging and say all the right things. So then when you do have a moment, which we all have, of jealousy or worry, it's easy to just bypass that.
Yeah. And you got to do what you do for other people for yourself.
Yeah. Yeah.
I always say to my friends who are going through crap, I'm like, can you please treat you like I would treat you right now? Can you please love you like I love you right now? Please.
But
Like
that was the
treat
magic
yourself
in
like
your
your best
coaching.
friend.
The magic in your coaching is that you have an honesty behind it. You're not afraid to be direct. And that for a person like me, I can't be doing with a lot of like hand patting.
No, I'm not going to blow smoke. Like
Exactly.
as nice as I am, like I'm not going to blow smoke because that's actually not nice. Like it's such
Yeah.
a funny thing, and especially growing up in Canada, believe me, I know blowing smoke and people being more nice, like nice as opposed to direct. You know,
Is it a Canadian thing? I never even knew that.
oh yeah, like well, just because it's a more inclusive society, there's more social programming, and it's cold as fuck. So like if you're a jerk to your neighbor, you die the next winter. That's what the like that's what the settler community is based on. And so like I'm a believer that that's one of the fundamental differences between also the northern United States and Canada is just how the settler community experiences this part of the world, and how that becomes a cultural norm after a while. And so one of the things that I feel like I learned from my late husband and from living in New York City as an actor was don't bullshit. Don't bullshit. And it's the New Yorker in me. Like I lived there for 13 years, and it is one of the greatest blessings that I've been given because I am a highly empathetic soul, and I feel a lot, and I care a lot, and I want to help a lot. And marrying that with being just truthful. New Yorkers aren't jerks, they're just truthful.
But the other thing, I always go back to this, I've brought this up before, but you're one of the people that makes me think of this. I don't know if you ever saw French Kiss. I watched it too
Oh, a
often in
long
the
time ago.
90s. Meg Ryan.
Yeah.
And the romantic thing he did for her was he showed her they lived in vineyards. And he had a thing where it showed like the lavender that went into the soil, the weather, the taste of cranberries or whatever, and it all became the wine. And when I've listened to your narrating and all the things that you show, you taking hikes up big hills, you being outside in nature, your tagline on your email, I recognize this, as all of those somehow flavor your read. Like
Because it's me.
it comes through.
Because it's
Yeah.
not, and I'm not, that's not technical. I'm not doing something, I'm being.
Yeah.
And that's why mine is wonderfully different than yours, and yours is wonderfully different than mine, because if we are not bringing ourselves to our work, then we will not connect with the audience.
Yeah, the grapes in the vineyard are not trying to seem like rosé.
Yeah, like the like spunkiness of some of the characters that I've played is more spunky than I am in real life. But that's just the spunky side of Erin getting a chance to shine. The shy part, the unsure part of other characters is just the shy and unsure part of me that is getting a chance to be explored.
So it's like turning the dial up on different aspects of your
Of
personality.
myself.
Yeah.
It's got to be me. Otherwise, I just feel like you hear a lot about truth and honesty in acting, and I feel like truth and honesty in acting comes from the individual soul, whatever you deem a soul.
Yeah, and you can't bypass that, because I think a lot of people learn truth.
Yeah. Oh, I'm being truthful because look, I'm crying. Go fuck yourself. Anybody can cry. Like, what if in that circumstance I wouldn't cry? What if that's the wrong choice for the dark night of my soul? Like, it's not like that. Then again, that comes down to what I rebel against so much, which in our whole entire society, that there is one way to live, to be, to express, to feel, to exist, that there is in any way that there is a norm, that there is any sort of fundamental way. And boy, has our society tried to make and created norms that are absolute, utter bullshit. And we're just all suffering from them. So like in Dear Lord, an actor is meant to hold the mirror up to society, hold the mirror up to yourself.
You have to go inward. You have to go inward before you can, and take it from me, guys, I don't go inward. I'm like, that I'm learning. You have to, because you
Yeah.
won't survive if you don't.
Yeah.
So you go into the booth,
Yeah.
you pull out. Somebody said to me, I think it was Joel, said that sometimes the coaching makes his narrating slower because he
Mm,
catches himself doing things and thinks, oh, I would have pulled my students up for doing that.
mm.
Do you find yourself self-coaching yourself
Oh yeah.
more so because of the people that you coach?
I think I catch different things like as I grow as a listener, as a performer, and as a coach. There's certain, like I'll go through certain things where I'm like, I'm really noticing that right now, or I'm
Yeah.
really noticing these things right now. Or sometimes it's actually just my body very subtly just goes, like just in the moment, it just very subtly says, mm-mm. So whenever I feel that, I stop and I listen and I go back and I'm like, oh yeah, no, that wasn't that wasn't connected, or that didn't work, or whatever. And I have a coaching student right now who's been very Canadian. I've been doing a bunch of Canadian books. Who's been in on a bunch of sessions that I've been doing, because she's learning from that. She's learning from essentially reading along, listening along from, and kind of getting the rhythm of it and noticing what I take myself back on. And that also has been a really interesting experience for me, because I get the opportunity then to be coaching, because I can give her like, oh, do you see, like I went back on that because I did
Yeah.
this.
Yeah.
And that doesn't work because this other thing is going to happen later. And if I spill the like beans there, or I got to pull that back so I can, I know where this scene is going. If I get too big now, we're dusted. This has got to be deep introspection so that I can get to the place of out, or vice versa. So it gives me that opportunity to be in double-minded and still be in the moment. Like it's because I have to be in the moment. Otherwise, I'm going to over direct myself. And I tend to not over direct myself, even though I do go back on stuff, because there's not a bloody book that has ever been recorded by the best people in our industry, the most stunning narrators that are out there, that had every line that was stressed properly and every note that was hit exactly. It doesn't exist. It never will exist. It just isn't a reality of art. Certainly not the kind of art that we do. And so because of that, I also believe, like, am I accomplishing the larger task at hand, which is the larger story, or am I micromanaging? And then I'm just going to kill it, because truth comes in flow as well. Like, the task is hard, my ability to meet it is going to match, and I'm going to hit flow. And that's when that's when the really exciting, fun part.
And also the bit about the pauses and the breaths. What's in between what you say is as important as what you say. And if you go and micromanage it to make it look like a slick sound like a slick commercial, you go back and you can do punch and roll. But if you go and do punch and roll too much on the same line, people.
Oh, for performance, yeah. I mean, I do it because I can't get it out of my face.
Yeah.
But I don't go back more than maybe twice on a line. And if it's performance, it's just because I'm not accomplishing it. Like, it actually does need to go faster.
Yeah.
Or like it just, the rhythm of it or the stress in it isn't, I know where it is, I know where it needs to be, and I just haven't quite.
See, punch and roll for somebody at your level is one thing, but and I know a lot of people listening to this call are still doing it. The biggest thing I see people when they start, it's the try too hard mode. They're punch and roll. They're doing it for everything. They want it to sound perfect. I mean, and then don't even get me started on how they go back in and like check their breaths.
Oh dear God.
You know, so yeah. I mean, I think at your level, you've got an instinctual. Oh, and that I want to ask you. See that trip you took recently? And I saw all those pictures enviously. Did you come back a different person? Because I would be surprised if you kind of didn't. That looked like life changing. Where were you again?
Scotland. Yeah, I
Yeah.
was in the Highlands in Scotland. I went for a long walk along the coast and then along the Speyside River and then went over to Skye. I've been to Skye before.
Were those your
Um,
friends, or were they like
yeah,
a,
yeah, no,
that's
they're
like,
friends of mine who live in town. Yeah,
eh,
yeah,
did it
and
not change you? Like, it feels like it would change your soul doing that, standing on
yeah.
those.
I mean, it was gorgeous. It was a reset and a refill, but I wouldn't say that it was a big life changer.
Okay.
Um, but it was a refill and just a reset, like just yeah, to live to live differently for a while, to not be doing what I usually am doing. And so that fills me
Yeah.
back up and it gives me the energy and the regeneration to be able to come back to my work
Yeah.
with greater ease. But it's not a life changer. I don't know, those I do a lot of I spend a lot of time in nature and I try to, go on hikes when I can and also just live my life from the perspective of the walk. One of the things that it did really reset was I didn't listen to anything when I was for the whole trip. So I didn't listen to music. I didn't listen to podcasts. I didn't listen to
How
audiobooks.
long was it?
3 weeks. Yeah. Listened to music in pubs when we would go to a pub at the end of every day. But
Wow.
so that also I think is important, is getting a clear out,
Yeah.
because before COVID, before times, I had a little bit more that I was doing in my life that had a variation. And so since then, I've had everything kind of circle in even more around narration. And so one of the things that I always seek is balance as an artist, and to make sure that I'm getting a really good full life of my own and that I'm not overly weighted into my art, because then I feel like artists become stagnant and overly directing and overly introspective about self, doing it right, doing right, when that's not how art exists.
You always hear about people that retire and
Mm-hmm.
and their life gets smaller. And then maybe
Yeah.
something happens and somebody scares them, while they're out shopping, or they hurt themselves, so that
Mm-hmm.
their life gets even smaller.
Yeah.
And I found that COVID had a deleterious effect on me,
Mm.
whereas I had a big, big life. I've moved to a different country every like 4 months of my life.
Yeah.
Like my
That's same
entire
as
life is
me.
like, let's move.
Yeah. I was traveling every 6 weeks. I was either in New York or some
Yeah.
other nation.
Because you become a different person, you explore different aspects of
Yeah.
who you are, but your life can become one little trigger of fear, and then your life gets smaller and smaller.
Mm-hmm.
And you are right. You might be okay, you're cognitively fine, but when you get in that booth, you're become a smaller artist, don't you?
Mm-hmm. I think so. And
Your
not
world is
everybody has to
smaller.
live a big life, I don't
Yeah.
think. I think balance is individual and balance is very specific to all sorts of people. I just think you have to do more than your art. You got to
Yeah.
do other art. You got to like go take a pottery class or,
Yeah.
just whatever it is that is something that uh, ignites your creative being outside of your creative art. I think it's important to explore. And for me, like being in nature in any fashion like that and not listening for a while and being in a different social sphere and all those kind of things, it's just rejuvenating. And I need to rejuvenate to do my art well.
What do you wish you could just kind of like, if you could wave a magic wand and
Mm-hmm.
all the people that have ever gone to you for coaching would innately know something in their bones, what would it be? If you could give them some knowledge or skill or
Yeah,
thought.
that these are your words, your thoughts, and your feelings. Like that is what they are. They are yours. They have to be yours. They have to be felt within yourself. That's what I feel, because you know I think January said it in an interview recently where she talked about, you think about what an audiobook is like. It's like if you're in the back of a car and you've got a 7-hour drive, someone else is driving, and it's at night, and you got to stay awake, and you and your friend haven't caught up in a long time, and they're like, tell me about what just went down, because they know something went down. And you're like, okay, here we go. And through the reliving of it, through the sharing of it with that person, you get to go through all of those things again. You feel them, you experience them again. And by doing so, your friend experiences it, and you are therefore not alone.
And the audiobook narrator is holding it for you. They're holding it.
That's what you are.
Yeah.
You are the person. They're your words, your feelings, your thoughts, and your experiences. They're nobody else's. They're yours.
Yeah.
And if you can find that and let go of all the garbage about about the right way, or am I doing it? Be your human self connected to that truth. And no, not everybody's going to like you, because guess what? Not everybody's going to like you in the world, in the real world. So not everybody's going to like what you're doing as well. But I feel like, there's some rules around what we do, and there's some things you want to be able to accomplish. But at the root of really good performance it's yours. It's your words. It's your thoughts, your feelings. And if you just feel it, you gotta trust a little
And you
bit.
got
It's
to
the
make
hardest
yourself.
part of acting.
And you've also got to like maybe get to know your thoughts and your feelings.
That you're enough.
Yeah.
They would always say, theater therapy, and it's like, or go to a therapist, like maybe more healthy. Like, just do your big work. There's a reason why highly empathetic people gravitate toward the performative arts. We live in the feeling space, and if we got to get clear about that, instead of, I think sometimes what happens is we separate ourselves. So the innate spark that got us here is we're scared of, because in the outside world, it's not always treated well. It's put out all the time, or it's flint is thrown on it all the time. And so somehow we're having trouble existing in that big open heart space in the real world. So we gravitate toward this thing that is really about empathy and compassion. The fundamental reason why we share story for millennia is to build empathy and compassion in each other, in our world, to live a better life, to identify, to grow, to all the things. That's why what I believe deeply is the reason for story. And so we gravitate toward this art because of that thing that we have within us. And then it's the exact same thing that scares us away from living in it.
Yeah, it's Anthony Mindel. We're made of stardust. How can that be wrong? How can you be literally made of,
how can you be made as an empathetic person, gravitate toward the performative arts, and then constantly try to do it right, instead of do your work, your big life work, your big heart soul work, so that you can live in vulnerability, feel safe enough to live in the vulnerability of your soul, and to live in the truth and vulnerability of another soul, because that's the given circumstances that have changed. Your soul hasn't changed. There's nothing you can do. There is no kind of acting that you can do to change your soul. That is not going to happen. But you can embody the given circumstances of another.
And you can reclaim your soul. Because
through that, I think.
Yeah, because like the question I asked you the first time is 10-year-old you, before you were told, because we're told about the technical aspects of life from the time we're like able to move, aren't we?
Yeah.
And like, how good of a student are you?
Yeah.
Learning all that stuff.
Yeah.
I love that. I cannot believe how fast this is going. Okay. I need to get some, literally, I can't, I blinked and the call's over, and a million more questions I had for you. So are you happy. If you could wave a magic wand and do something like a certain type of book next, what would
Oh,
you be looking in the book that, like, your dream book? What would you be
yeah.
looking for?
For me, it's always YA or middle grade. Um, because I think that's the spark of my artist's soul lives in that place. And I love the strength and vulnerability of young people to become. They're becoming.
Yeah.
And I mean, everybody, we're all becoming. We're all becoming. I'm still becoming. But there's something about those stories that, yeah, I feel most connected to, whether they be like a mystery thriller or a straight coming of age or whatever it is. That is, and it makes my soul happy when I'm doing a YA or a middle grade. No matter what that kid is going through, I walk away from that feeling like, if I could listen to this book when I was younger, like there's growth in it, and so it feels very healing and good to do those books. So those are my favorites.
I love the way you talk about. I recently had a book. I recently got a book that I had done another one in the series from a completely different company when I was in the beginning of my career. And the circumstance, I was stressed, I was new, I wished I'd. And now I've got another book in the series, and I thought that it found me.
Mm-hmm.
Like, do you sometimes feel that the books are finding you? Like they come at a
Oh
certain
yeah.
time.
Oh yeah, I have one coming up that I'm gonna actually start reading once I deal with the manuscript, which is unfortunately for over formatted. Um, is uh, is about bullying and neural diversity. And
Oh,
in my own family, we've recently had experiences of this with one of the children in our family, my nieces and nephews kind of family level, and um, it is really about a mother who has to learn and advocate for her daughter, and is now trying to educate others because she went down the rabbit hole of education herself. So it's a nonfiction, which I don't do a ton of nonfiction, but it's a nonfiction that to me is about, again, fundamentally embracing the diversity and of all people, that we don't all
yeah.
learn the same, nor should we learn the same, that there isn't a norm. And so I'm really excited about that. And it just found me kind of on the cusp of what our family has been through. And so it's a really interesting, it's a really interesting thing when they come in the way they come in. And
Yeah.
I think a lot of us suffer mostly from the perspective, from the idea, especially in relationship, around why are you not doing it the way I do it? Which is a
Yeah.
hysterical thought, because that expectation, that, I mean, that way only torture lies, because there is no human being on the face of the planet that
Yeah.
experiences the life that you experience.
I'm I want to say thank you very much for the help you gave me and the time you took with me, because basically I trusted you enough
Mm-hmm.
and you're different enough than that from me, that I was able to, through your eyes, see things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
Because we're all alone at the end of the day when it comes to our demos and what we can do. We can only do what we can do. And as you said, it comes from us. But you explained it to me in a way that I could see, that
Good.
I could internally grasp. And that is quite, I still don't know how you did it, but there were
Well, it
times
was
you
my
seemed
pleasure.
very patient.
Yeah. Well, because a lot of the time, like a good coach, and part of this is also just coaching in a way, like coaching as a thing, like as a actual skill set, of a lot of good coaching should be about letting somebody out, that then people figure it out for themselves
Yeah.
through your coaching, because you can only get somebody as far as they're willing to go in any aspect, psychologically, emotionally, performance, or otherwise. It doesn't matter what you're coaching. The idea is that if I do it for you, if I just do everything and say this, and this, you haven't learned anything and you will not bring it forward. The only opportunity for growth is if you actually are the instigator of that growth. And so my job is to just help you maybe see that there's a door over there, but you still have to walk to it and open it.
But you gave me the reason that I might want to walk through it. And that was the key. Because you give my brain a reason, it's like crack for me. You give my brain a reason, and then it starts working and connecting dots. But just being told there's a door and you can do it. I remember something about, like, if you scoop things up too much, the people listening, their brain doesn't know how to deal with that. I remember, then my brain, the synapse is connected. See what I'm saying? But if you hadn't and just told me about that line reading and how to change it, I wouldn't have understood it as fully. And I think that is
100%, because you have to see what the outcome, right? It's like, so, because I can say, it's like the whole thing about getting the note of go slower or go faster. Slower and faster are not a thing.
Yeah.
Faster is need and slower is need. You have to figure out how different those needs are and why they are occurring. The same thing is like lifting a bunch of lines. It's like, if it's all lifted, then I'm on the hook over here as a listener. I can't hear anything. I haven't eaten anything up. I don't know where I am. I'm like, yes, we're going towards something. You keep telling me we're going towards something when actually you're finishing a whole bunch of thoughts. So it's the same kind of thing, is like going faster or slower has to do with the fact that, like, you're not connecting with me, or you need to connect with me more intensely. Like, there's a reason behind it. So I really try to, whenever possible, avoid the, like, again, it goes back to the vowels and the vocal fry. Like, I avoid giving technical notes like that. Once in a while I will, if it's necessary, like I'm not communicating enough and so the thing's not occurring. But I will always back it up with a human reason why it needs to occur, so that you feel it, because it's our bodies. Like, I mean, I'm a yoga instructor too, right? And a yoga therapist, and I have thousands of hours of teaching and training in that world. And so my whole life has been about bodies and body stories and emotional stories. And I think, like, if you don't feel it in your body, it's a useless thing. It's never going to stick.
Yeah. And you give the power. You gave me the power to feel it. You didn't just throw it out there.
No, I can line read till the cows come home, but what use is that?
Yeah. I still wish I could just have you there, like, directing every single book I
do. No, that's your journey. That's not mine.
I am already planning a trip to Scotland.
Yay.
I've been trying to convince the husband to move there for years. Why do you think I'm married a Glaswegian? I didn't expect to end up in England. Erin, it has been pure delight. So, famous last words.
Okay. From me?
Yes, please.
About what?
Life. Anything, if you would want people to walk away from this call with one thought, one thing that they remember, if they remember nothing else, what would you like to tell them?
Live your best life. Like, go and live your full life, whatever that means for you. Open your heart, live your full life, open your heart to others, keep opening your heart to others, and have good boundaries, but also open your heart to others. But live your good life. Like, as an artist, we gotta be in growth mindset oriented. I believe we have to live in abundance, and that takes a lot of work, and it takes also filling out your own individual living experience, whatever that is.
Thank you so much, Erin. Thank you.
Thanks, everyone.
Thanks to everyone. Mwah.
Thank you.
Bye.